So I'm actually going to begin by giving a speech that somebody else already gave. You ready? Here we go. I don't have to tell you that things are bad. Everybody knows that things are bad. A dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shop owners actually keep a gun underneath the countertop. And there's nobody anywhere that seems to know what to do about it. I don't have to tell you things are bad. They're not just bad, they're actually crazy. Have you heard that speech? It's not actually even a real speech. It's a monologue from a movie called The Network, 1976. It was actually written by a gentleman by the name of Paddy Chayefsky. Mr. Chayefsky is actually the only person to have won 3 Oscars for writing movies. So if you want a good speech, don't go to speechwriter, go to the movies. Movies are about drama, and we certainly live in very dramatic times. I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows that things are bad. Do you have a list? I do. Wildfires, hurricanes, floods, tornadoes. These are just natural disasters. They're occurring, by the way, at unprecedented rates. Billion-dollar disasters that are devastating economies and killing our neighbors, seemingly with recklessness. Those are actually just natural disasters. I'm not talking about the unnatural disasters, the things that we actually do to each other. The loss of civility. Some would even say the loss of civil society itself. Because for whatever reason, being civil with each other doesn't seem to fit in a lot of people's agendas anymore. Even some people that we used to respect a great deal. I don't have to tell you things are bad. Here's another speech that I didn't write. This one is actually from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and the year is 1933. Very important year. 1933 is the height of the Great Depression. It deserves a lot of attention because at that time, the unemployment rate was actually 25%. 1/4 of Americans were out of work. The average wage was actually cut in half in the preceding 3 years. By 1932, joblessness led to homelessness, and homelessness led to literally millions of Americans living on the streets of America in non-traditional housing arrangements, also known as mom's couch, if mom still had a couch, or on the street. Yet in the midst of all of this, the very first thing that President Roosevelt said was this: our distress comes from no lack of substance. Compared with the perils that our forefathers endured and conquered because they believed and were not afraid. We still have so much to be thankful for. Plenty is still at our doorstep. I don't have to tell you that things are bad, but listen, we've been here before, 1976, 1933, the list will go on and on and on. Even if all of this seems unprecedented and new, here's the thing. Americans didn't come through hard times just because we always do. Americans prescribed for themselves the course of action and the tools that were best suited for those times. So the pathway out of this particular jungle of despair and disappointment in our fellow man, that pathway is ours to carve. The tools are ours. They've always been ours. They're within us, and they come to us at the moment we need them the most. So all of the problems that I talked about at the beginning and your own list, whatever those answers might be, we're going to get there faster if we choose to stand united for a different cause. Looking for a solution together prescribed for these times. Doing so, I think, is going to require us to look outside of our current echo chambers. Because let's face it, if the solutions were there in our respective corners, in our social networks, in our lives, if they were there, we would know. And we'd now be living in harmony and unity. But let's face it, we have to challenge ourselves to do something different. Perhaps we need to seek out a way to work together with those who don't share our views or our beliefs. Why? Because when we work side by side with those with whom we disagree with, and we do so for a common cause, maybe for helping others in need or assisting those in dire distress, we can actually see that the people with whom we disagree with, they're not monsters. They're not monsters after all. And then we can begin to work with them perhaps on other things. or at least have the opportunity to do so. Here's the truth. Most of us, we don't spend a lot of time with the people we disagree with or who feel differently about policy or politics. Because we spend so little time with them, we actually enjoy, and I use this word intentionally, some of us actually enjoy the luxury of assuming the worst about them. And sometimes it feels good, this id versus ego thing in the side of our human consciousness, the buzz of assuming that the other side isn't just wrong, they're actually evil. But listen, this is a really hard feeling to hold on to when you see them up close, when they're standing next to you in the food line handing out food to the homeless, or when they're going with you to a local school to provide school supplies to the needy. You see, it's easy to love those who think the same way that we do, who share our belief system. But where's the nobility in that? Where's the challenge in that? Where's the value in that? You've heard the concept of love your neighbor and hate your enemy. I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I wish I could take credit for that line, but I can't. So when we serve next to others with whom we disagree with, we have the opportunity to focus on our shared humanitarian spirit and values. That actually becomes the through line and the focus. How do I know? Because I help to run the American Red Cross, or more specifically, the international aspects of the American Red Cross and the services to our veteran military families. I've seen this unifying power of humanity up close in some of the most divisive and dangerous parts of the globe. For the past 8 years, I've had the honor of leading over 600 staff members, 14,000 humanitarian volunteers in service in over 50 countries around the world. We also work in every single veterans hospital here in the United States and in many, many military treatment facilities around the world. We take care of our wounded warriors no matter where they are. No organization has served more wounded warriors besides the VA than the American Red Cross. So yeah, it's definitely a motivating mission. It's not about the mission, getting people motivated about the mission. Getting people to do it the first time, to take the first step, that's the challenge. So do it. Take the first step because service unites. Service extends our desire not to change our definitions of right and wrong, but to see ideological opponents as human beings that are worthy of respect because we too are oh so human. I don't have to tell you that things are bad, but listen, even when they're so bad that we lock people up, when things are that bad, Americans still find grace. Think about the justice system. You know, I've also been a licensed attorney for 20 years, and this concept has fascinated me. Grace is actually written into the law, here and everywhere else around the world. There comes a point in time when somebody's committed a crime against our community, actually gets to come back to our community, perhaps with a proclivity to create another crime. Yet today, the simple act of disagreement causes many of us, some of the most highly educated and self-declared tolerant among us, to institute permanent punishment on half the country. Our neighbors, our friends, sometimes even our own family members across the dinner table don't talk to each other anymore because of these things. It doesn't have to be this way. People who serve in the military, veterans like myself, many who are here and watching, they know that service creates unity. I'm thinking about the people that I serve with, and here's the truth. When people are stripped away from the noise and haste of the world to focus on literal matters of life and death, they understand very quickly that we have more in common than not. You've heard the adage, there are no atheists in the foxhole. That's not really about religion. What it's really about are exigent circumstances that are pressing together two individuals that may not share a common belief system, but understand and respect each other's humanity and the need to unite in order to overcome a common challenge. Will this work? This idea of serving together. Listen, I'm actually not the only person who thinks that. David Eisner is CEO of Repair the World, and John Gompertz is the former CEO of Powell's America's Promise Alliance, and they said this: there's a virtuous cycle between strengthening national service and strengthening our ability to collaborate across differences, to reduce political polarization, hate, and violence, and to grow our ability to solve our shared challenges. I'm not saying abandon your principles or stop being an ally. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that nobody's actually going to win this battle by imagining that they're going to simply triumph over the other side, who will just simply submit and walk away. So if you wish to leave some undying mark on the face of oblivion, you're going to need somebody's hand next to yours as you carve it into the stone. Service unites us towards that idea, suggesting a more immediately humane hierarchy of priorities. Listen, people that are suffering in disasters, they don't have the luxury of arguing about a better tomorrow because their pain came up with the sun today when they looked up and saw they didn't have a roof. That family's not going to care, nor do they really want to hear whether the Red Cross team that's coming to help them prefers deep-fried turkey or tofu. That family in distress just wants to know how to feed their kids tonight because their lives have been turned upside down and their town's been decimated. So for those that have met those needs, for the fellow Americans who are taking care of others in desperate times, some of those who are here and listening, for those individuals, I say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to this country. And for the rest of you, maybe you've helped a neighbor without much fanfare, maybe you helped after a disaster, or you worked at a veterans hospital or a food bank or a community center or a church, some small act of generosity. I say thank you for your service as well. Because when I visit the volunteers after a long, really, really hard duty day, and we sit on the edges of their bunk and we talk, they maybe just spent 24 hours taking care of other people and they're exhausted. When we sit down and talk, I see people that aren't talking about politics and issues and social things they don't agree with. They're not talking about that. What I see are people that have had their priorities realigned. Not their beliefs, but what they're willing to do and with whom they're willing to serve beside in order to serve others. Service unites. So I encourage all of you to volunteer. Or if you haven't started, begin. Bring somebody with you, but just don't bring anybody. If you had that friend across the aisle, I know a lot of people don't have them anymore, but the one that you ostracized, if you still have the email or phone number, that's the person you go with and serve with. I don't have to tell you that things are bad. You see your own communities that are struggling and suffering. But now is the moment. Now is the time for us to find our way back with solutions that are best suited for our times. We get to carve out that path regardless of how bad things are. We will always conquer our demons. That is the America that I've seen show up for our neighbors time and time again. Our distress comes from no lack of substance. The substance of serving others is within inside all of us, and it's the thing that represents the best in us. Let's tap into that part of our humanitarian spirit that can de-shackle us from the pettiness to focus on the unifying force of service, the humanitarian spirit that will lift us to embrace the plenty before us, not the differences between us. Yes, there is still plenty before us, and service to others is the solution that we can prescribe for ourselves because we know that service unites.